You know, we make fun of Texas on this show, but they are very generous towards people with disabilities. For example, their governor, Greg Abbott, is confined to a wheelchair after a tree branch snapped, landed on his back in the mid-'80s. And despite refusing to enforce the Americans with Disabilities Act while he was Attorney General of Texas, he was still able to collect millions of dollars from the owner of that tree, even though he has since dedicated much of his political career towards tort reform and capping the kind of settlements he received to about $250,000. In other words, he collected millions of dollars on his settlement, and then after he got his settlement, he's made it impossible for anyone else to get that kind of settlement again. And that says a lot about Texas's character. They elected him governor. They're very understanding and supportive of people with disabilities. And now it turns out Texas has a speaker. His name is Dade Phelan. He's a Republican from Beaumont, Texas. And apparently, Speaker Dade Phelan, Republican of Texas, apparently he suffered a massive stroke last week. But the people of Texas couldn't be more supportive of the man. I think this is great. You have a governor in a wheelchair, and now you have the Speaker of the Texas House had a massive stroke, and he's still showing up to work each day, and nobody questions him. Here is Texas Speaker Dade Phelan last Friday night, toiling away, working for the people, not letting a massive stroke stop him from doing the people's business of Texas, like persecuting the LGBTQ community and making sure everyone has an assault weapon.
Mr. Speaker, I move adoption.
Mr. Campbell, send that amendment. The amendment is acceptable to the author. Is there objection to the opposite amendment? The chair has done. The amendment is adopted. The chair recognizes Mr. Johnson of Harris. Mr. Johnson of Harris to speak in opposition to the bill.
It's not right. You want the chair recognizes Ms. Niave Criado to speak in opposition.
The chair recognizes Ms. Niave Criado to speak in opposition to the bill.
Isn't that great? I mean, you know, I'm sorry this man had a stroke, but he's an inspiration to all of us. The Speaker of Texas has a massive stroke and just gets right up there and keeps working.
Mr. Campbell, send that amendment. The amendment is acceptable to the author. Is there objection to the opposite amendment? The chair has done. The amendment is adopted.
Excuse what? Oh, I'm sorry. It wasn't a massive stroke. Texas Speaker Dade Phelan was shit-faced. My mistakes.
Send that amendment. The amendment is acceptable to the author. Is there objection to the opposite amendment?
That's too bad. I thought it was a massive stroke, and I was proud of the guy. Turns out he's just an alcoholic. Well, it's too bad. And Ken Paxton, the Attorney General, the Chief Law Enforcement Officer of the state, he saw the speaker, the Texas speaker, trying to speak, the slur of the House of Texas. That's Ken Paxton, and he's the Attorney General of Texas, the Chief Law Enforcement Officer of the state. And he saw that the speaker was drunk and immediately called for him to resign. Ken Paxton said that the speaker was embarrassing the state of Texas. And given that Texas keeps reelecting Ted Cruz, you know, that state doesn't embarrass easy. But you know what? Maybe Ken Paxton shouldn't have said anything. The Attorney General should have kept his mouth shut. Because on Thursday, a Republican-led committee in the House that's run by the shit-faced Dade Phelan, the speaker, miraculously, a coincidence, Ken Paxton calls for the speaker to resign, and then all of a sudden, one of the speaker's committees recommends that Attorney General Ken Paxton be impeached. Now, we've all known about Ken Paxton for at least 10 years, right? Why is he all of a sudden impeachable? Because their dipsomaniac of a speaker is in charge, and he said, nobody calls me an alcoholic. Impeach the guy. I think that's what he said. What he said was this.
Send that amendment. The amendment is acceptable to the author. Is there objection to the opposite amendment?
I think in drunkese, that means impeach Ken Paxton for calling me a drunk. Can you imagine wanting to impeach an attorney general just because he called you a drunk? Well, actually, Ken Paxton, he was indicted back in 2015 on charges of securities fraud and failing to register with the state securities board while serving as a state legislator in Texas. He was selling investments and lying to potential investors, and he was indicted. Somehow the trial has yet to take place. There's another indictment. And back in February of this year, the Attorney General, who was indicted in 2015, the Attorney General agreed to pay deputies working underneath him inside the Attorney General's office. He agreed to pay them $3.3 million and apologize. He apologized for his retaliation. He apologized because he retaliated right after these 4 lawyers working in the Texas State Justice Department accused him of committing several crimes. So the Attorney General doesn't like being called a criminal, so he retaliated, and then they sued, and the Attorney General settled, agreed to apologize to them, and paid them $3.3 million. Well, actually, it didn't come out of his pocket. The state of Texas is giving his 4 deputies the $3.3 million. So to be clear here, Ken Paxton, the Attorney General of Texas, had people working underneath him, and they were paid to prosecute criminals. But when these 4 deputies discovered that the guy they were working for might be a criminal, they spoke up, and he retaliated. 4 senior staffers working underneath Attorney General Ken Paxton of Texas will now split the $3.3 million. They already received an apology from Ken Paxton, the Attorney General. And as I said, $3.3 million isn't coming out of Ken Paxton's pocket. The state of Texas is paying those fines. It's great to be a white man in Texas, isn't it? Indicted in 2015, still no trial. And then on Thursday of this week, miraculously, for some reason, the Texas House filed 20 charges of impeachment against Ken Paxton, Attorney General. One of those charges is bribery. I don't understand why. We've known this man was a criminal since 2015, and yet the Texas House did nothing. Maybe the Speaker, can you explain why, Speaker Phelan, can you explain why the House waited so long?
Well, send that amendment. The amendment is acceptable to the author. Is there objection to the opposite amendment?
Okay, thank you for explaining that to us, Speaker Phelan of Beaumont, Texas. What a great state Texas is.